All right, what is going on, Banter fam? Welcome into today's edition of In the Game. I am your host, Hustle, and as always, we are going to be diving deep into the NFT gaming markets, and we have some very, very smart individuals who are building some amazing projects here joining us today, as we have Don, the project studio head for Shrapnel, as well as Yuheng, the CEO of Delysium, joining us to discuss each of their projects, which are really making waves and setting the tone for how an NFT game should be structured. I'm super excited to get into all of this in this edition and bring them on and discuss not only their projects, but the state of the industry now. So without further ado, let's get in the game.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If you ain't here to hustle, why is you here? But if you here to hustle, the moon is near. It's crypto Banter, not financial advice. If you don't listen, what's the cost, what's the price? This ain't a game, put you on game. I know you don't play, but ain't a percent. If you ain't here to hustle, why is you here? But if you here to hustle, the moon is near. It's crypto Banter, not financial advice. If you don't listen, what's the cost, what's the price? This ain't a game, put you on game. I know you don't play, but ain't a play. If you get lost, show you the way.
All right, and let's get right into it. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on Don, who is the studio head from Shrapnel, and Yuheng, the CEO of Delysium. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. And how is y'all's early day or late evening, depending upon the time zone? How is everybody's day going?
Good so far. Thanks for having us, Hustle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
perfect. It's the start of a new day. Yeah.
Definitely. And in crypto, every day feels like a week, every month feels like a year. So, yeah, I understand completely. And let's just kind of start off for anyone who might not have knowledge, and I don't know how they wouldn't, of each of your projects. Let's just go ahead and run down. Y'all can give like a quick synopsis of each of your projects and the games that you're building. So, Don, go ahead and start it off with Shrapnel, and then we'll move over to Yuheng with Delysium.
Yeah, for sure. Shrapnel is the world's first AAA extraction shooter built completely natively on the blockchain from the ground up, with our entire economy design based on a free floating NFT ownership as well as a utility token. It also has a rich set of creator tools that allow people to put their brand on their vanity or weapons, as well as do things like build maps that the other players in the ecosystem can participate in, and has a form of discovery and reward that actually incentivizes people to create awesome stuff and be rewarded for it and incrementally own more of the Shrapnel platform.
Amazing. Yeah, and I love the moddable aspect of it. It really brings back some nostalgia of some games where you're structuring the maps and modding it yourself. So
Yeah,
I
I mean
really love that.
that's where it came from. It's on the Shrapnel team. I've been making AAA games for almost 20 years, and like our CEO has been making it for almost 30. So we're all have the nostalgia of like late 90s, early 2000s kind of modding scene of Quake
Yeah,
and America's Army and whatnot. That was definitely the twinkle in the eye that started this.
for sure. No, I love that completely. And then you, Hank, give us a breakdown on Delysium.
Yeah. Hey, hey, fellows. It's truly my honor to present our project and vision to all of you today, and happy to meet each other here. So we are Delysium, the world's first playable AAA MMO open world Web3 game. It's a different category, which a category that it's more native and more proper to apply the whole Web3 economies or ecosystems. And we want to build Delysium to become the most sustainable ecosystem for all the Web2 and Web3 players, with lots of different protocols, platforms, tools, content, and applications inside these metaverse. We have been backed by many top VCs in the gaming and Web3 area, and the same as Shrapnel's team. That our production team, most of them are from AAA industry. They have been working for Riot, Scopely, for Ubisoft, lots of like traditional AAA AAA giants. And also our R&D team has been working in the MMO category for over 18 years, and they have been working on Unreal 3 since 2009. So yeah, that's a basic backgrounds. But to give you more highlights or more uniqueness of Delysium. As an AI company behind Delysium, we committed to build a much more sustainable metaverse with massive AI participants. We never presented our own project, our metaverse Delysium, simply as a play to earn game, but a true metaverse with gameplay combined with AI that could be innovative, fun, and immersive enough to attract the players. And also, definitely a sustainable tokenomics on top of the gameplay to bring ownership to the players and connect the value between real world and the metaverse. So it's a more like an open world and MMO. It's like a combination of World of Warcraft and Cyberpunk 2077 and Apex Legends and so on. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. And I love, first and foremost, I say all the time, bet on people and not just like promises in the space. And just hearing the tenure of experience for both of the projects behind this, I mean, it truly is amazing to hear, because I'm the type of person that would back a true game developer any given day over like VCs coming in and just trying to take over a studio and pump out these quick games that aren't really
never
games. And then
happens.
number two, yeah, and then number two, y'all are building quality games, and when we look at the gameplay and the teasers and the snippets, the operators for Shrapnel, the gameplay for Delysium, I'm super impressed on both ends, and that kind of leads us to exactly what we were just talking about with betting on, trying to bet on the right people in this space, but also coming from your experience in Web 2 games and these AAA studios, potentially seeing the shift yourselves over the years in the way that microtransactions play a role in these economies and in these games. But at the same time, the resistance from gamers, because it's called NFTs potentially, like they don't like the technology because they just think NFTs are bad or something. But whenever you look at this news yesterday, which I know we all saw with Diablo, $110,000 to maximize your character. But whenever you spend that money, you don't have true ownership. So where do you guys truly see the gap between maybe gamers currently and the amount of money they're willing to detach with without having ownership? So the power of ownership back to the players. What kind of trend do you see that going forward?
I mean, I think it'll be an absolute no-brainer, complete you know, complete paradigm shift for the industry. I think the thing that has to happen is the games have to be sticky, and for both of these projects, really, but that's kind of leading the way, so that the game has to be first. It has to be fun. It has to be something like that you want to play, irrespective of all these other pieces, and then that becomes the table stakes that people will expect and anticipate. And once that happens, from a what people expect perspective, like there will be no choice. And it'll be interesting to see for established publishers what that means. Not necessarily for the retail titles. I think there's still will always be a space for a $60 single player narrative adventure. Like that is always going to be a thing. That's the equivalent of somebody picking up a book, loving to read it, and getting engrossed in it. I think, but when you look at the style of games that have typically been in a free to play space, or a service based game, like that's absolutely the next evolution. And it's not an if, it's a when.
I agree completely. Yuheng, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I actually the team behind Elysium and including me, we hold the same view as Shrapnel. It's all about like whether your game is fun enough and sticky enough for the players to be attracted. But we have a more clear definition about what we're heading in the whole GameFi trend or in the whole industry. So from our own perspective, we think the ultimate GameFi would be a new business model compared with like traditional AAA, the copy selling model, and the pay to win mobile games. There are lots of existing successful products out there, and a very huge player user base, which we all foresaw that's the next step for all the crypto industry. But defining GameFi simply as a play to earn, I would rather define it as a new balance between speculators, consumers, and participants. So, or use a new phrase I got from Richard with one of the partner from Galaxy Interactive, which is so-called pay to win to win. So like previously for mobile games, we all use the words pay to win, that consumers they invest in the game assets and to make them stronger and to to get more feedback from the gameplay. While it's not friendly for all the other participants, what actually brought to the industry is it actually like more friendly to all those participants, like whether you are rich or not, whether you have invested in assets or not, you invest in time and you treat it as work, you can also participate. So I think for the Web3, it means a more equal and open ecosystem for all these three roles. For speculators, they can still directly invest their money. They cannot they cannot even play the game themselves. They can stake their assets to generate revenue. They can lend their assets to participants to play for them. So speculators, they can also help the ecosystem to grow larger and this is, I think, the key of the business model. For consumers, they are the fundamental of the business model. They are the fundamental of the Web3 ecosystem, because without them, what happened to actually we all see, like we all saw from the market. So consumers, they are attracted by the gameplay. They are invested like in the game for a certain feedback, and they are satisfied. So I think, to satisfying consumers, we need to make sure our game either is high quality, or the gameplay is fun, or it's unique to all the other traditional AAA. We need to make sure that. And for participant, I think it's a nature for all the Web3 ecosystem, because the value natively connected between the real world and the virtual world. So every value that you generated inside this virtual world, they are directly or indirectly connected with the real world value. So for participants, they have enough motivation to join this ecosystem and to help the ecosystem to become sustainable. So I think it's more about like I think it's more theoretical, but theoretical speaking, like we are experimenting a new business model in the whole gaming industry. And I think like projects like Shrapnel and Delysium, we are experimenting that and we are proving that. And we all want to prove to the traditional players that tokenomics or play to earn is too simple. It's a too like speculator driven business model. We want it to be a more sustainable, which absolutely be a consumer driven business model. So I think for us the goal is the same, and we want to prove it. And that it's not I quote like the saying from Don, which it's not a time of it's not a matter of why, or it's a matter of what, it's a matter of when. It's a matter of like when we build this and when we prove it. So it's not it's a very, very near future, to be honest. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, the space is so microtransaction driven that once we get over that barrier for the traditional gamer to be able to understand what everything that you just guys laid out means, because right now where it's at such early, like what I always term this is the adoption curve of traditional games went from, the arcade games of the old times. It went through those peaks and valleys, Sega, PlayStation, Xbox 360. But now we're up at this top of the adoption curve where we're about to head into metaverse VR. But for crypto gaming, they started off so simplistic because we started that curve all over again. No one was going to put millions and millions into developing these games, for example, whenever they didn't even know that the play to earn industry would catch fire. So we really started that adoption trend over again. And I think people were really rushing to see these really good games. And there's always the FUD on the industry. And I know that both of you guys are taking a lot of pride and time to make sure y'all build quality projects, which I think speaks a lot for the nature of, the projects that you're building. And so, Don, like, for example, how long has Shrapnel been in development already?
About a year.
And then Yuheng on Delysium?
Yeah, almost the same. We have been working on Delysium for 1.5 years.
That's amazing. And like, that's the type of stuff you want to hear. Whenever there's a lot of teams that will pump out games that are super low quality, but they know people will buy a token, they know people will do this and that to try to make money, it speaks towards, they're not really, that's not a game whatsoever. It's way too monetarily attached. And even with Axie Infinity, the second that the token went down, the whole sentiment went down because everyone attaches it to a token price. And that's it. That was the only thing that people ever got into those games for, was the problem. They didn't get into it because it was too fun. They got into it to make money. So I do want to kind of just go through each of you guys' projects and kind of just show what you guys are building so people can understand the level and the capability of each of your teams and what's around the corner. So we'll just kind of go in order and just kind of kick it off with Shrapnel. I know that Shrapnel's, y'all's NFT mint is on the 9th for the operators, and you'll have a lot of stuff down the pipeline. So can you give us a rundown and give the community a rundown of, when we talk about moddable maps, can you explain for anyone who might not understand what that is? Because I'm thinking Halo 3 Forge. I'm thinking completely, modding up my own maps. So can you give people kind of your perspective on what that means?
Yeah, so I mean, with the timeline that we're going after and the way that we're participating with the community, it will be an evolution of modability over time. So the beginnings of that are actually what I would describe as kind of chunky modability. Those are large prefabs, constrained ways that they can be modified in the environment, added and moved in the environment, but ways that make sure that we're not giving people too much rope to hang themselves effectively. If you've ever tried to make a map in something like just default Unreal, then it takes a lot of effort, a lot of play testing. Even when you think you got it, you don't got it. So we're trying to make that as high a quality product as possible and easy, and then basically open the floodgates so that more and more of the tools that we're building internally for our own Unreal editor become available to the community, and then there's more and more affordance. It also, in terms of, you'd use the M word before, metaverse. We have a pillar where, like, we're not the metaverse, we're part of it, which is basically saying, like, we're making the Shrapnel corner of the metaverse, and we see the metaverse as kind of this, interoperability and transportability that's built on blockchain itself. And as a result, like, this evolution of the tools make sure that the beginning versions of what we start to see populated in the community and by the community are actually shrapnel-y things, right? So the game mode will always be the game mode, but the aesthetics you'll start to see slowly change over time. Some of that will be seasonal, so it'll be our own art team kind of populating prefab sets with different biomes and different palette shifts. And then it'll start to become more and more driven by the community itself. And once you hit that point, it's kind of a tipping point of who knows at that point, right? Hopefully you've seeded enough of your DNA to make sure that Shrapnel remains shrapnel-y, but at that point it's the community that decides, right? They have the power, and ultimately it should be them that decides at that point. In terms of
That's
things
brilliant.
like, we come from, like I said, that space of modability and customizability, and know all the most brilliant stuff is things we would never think of. So it wouldn't behoove us to, like, put the tethers on people. For something like the Operators project, we come from, like, our founding team actually all met at HBO, and we all, like, worked at Xbox previously, and EA and LucasArts and everything. We have a strong transmedia background. So for people who don't know what that means, it's effectively telling various stories in the same universe across different mediums, so that people can kind of come to the story in the world where they want to meet it. So for some people, that's graphic novels. For some people, that's going to be film or short film. For some people, it's the game itself. Some people might just jump into the creator tools first. So Operators are actually tied to a comic book series that we're doing. There's going to be a run of five different characters. Effectively, the timeline rotates around the time when the actual, like, cataclysmic event happens, where the moon gets hit, that starts the actual, like, Shrapnel universe properly. So we're going to be doing these 5 mints over 5 weeks that are focused on the 5 characters from the comic books, and those will tie back into people being able to get the comic book and affordances like utilities with the comic book, as well as with the gaming community itself. So it's just how we're kind of starting to build that world building and that story, and bring the community in to participate and kind of put their slice down with it.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And what you said about community rang so true with what I was just saying too about Axie. Whenever the price goes down, even the community, once it can be a game all it wants to be, right? Until that happens and the community gets upset and leaves the game. And when you're putting community first in an actually fun game, it really sets the tone. So what about the utility that people will get from owning an operator? Could you break down, like, what each operator will provide for anyone who is interested in the public sale on the 9th, or anyone who's whitelisted potentially, but for some reason wouldn't want to mint at this point? what would
Yeah,
be
I
the
mean,
utility behind each operator?
there is some rarity variation, but for the most part, it's tied to the actual comic book drops that we'll be doing in the future, right around Comic-Con timeframe.
Awesome.
It's tied to we have a slew of kind of future pieces of the platform we'll be releasing via NFTs as well as just actual like platform engagement. And then, of course, there's a notion of the in-game assets that will be tied to the particular operators that you get, that you'll have access to, as well as just community access effectively in our Discord, as well as part of our community design philosophy is making sure that we're involving people in like greater and greater touch points. So that includes things like focus tests, play tests, and basically creating kind of I don't want to say a trusted group, but a more engaged group of
Yeah.
of the Shrapnel like players, and the operators will be tied to that as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love that. And as you said, it's like it's the OG drop basically. So
Yep.
you get to
Well,
always have that role and kind of be a OG shrapnel vet.
yep, yep. We already have a role called the Echo Company that is our
There it
OG.
is.
So I can't. Yeah, yeah. They were the first to find us and the first to get involved, and they've been a great community. This is kind of like expanding it just a little bit.
Awesome. And then Yuheng, let's talk a little bit about. Let's go ahead and get into Delysium, and we'll show a little bit of the gameplay clips and kind of you guys' vision. So anything around the corner or that you are particularly working on right now. And what is the timeline? So you mentioned you've been working on it for about a year. What is the timeline for release? And then how can people get involved as well? Do y'all have any upcoming drops or characters or anything like that?
Yeah, I think compared with NFT, we more focused on, as I mentioned, we more focused on like the gameplay, about more focused on like delivering the qualified gameplay to the users. So yeah, we have been working for 1.5 year, and like during the early stage, we mostly like build the whole infrastructure, the fixes engine, all the in-game assets, the art style, and the core battle system. We built all of that, and we have launched our pre-alpha test from May 1st, and it has been 4 weeks. And like players in our community, they have been got the like entry tickets to our pre-alpha test, and we're scaling up the pre-alpha test from this June. And our first alpha season will be launched in this July. So we will opening up our PvP tournament season in our own central city in this July, and it will be a PvP battle royale. So that's where I mentioned that we're actually referring to like lots of traditional battle royale game, including PUBG and Fortnite and Apex Legend. But as I mentioned a bit earlier, that we are an AI company, and we focus more on building a unique metaverse with massive AI participants, and that's where our UGC is unique. So this is actually the next stage, but in the first season, we'll be also launching our an AI NFTs for our players, that they can own all the virtual beings which is powered by AI inside the Delysium, which in the first stage, all these AI powered meta beings, they will be able to participate the PvP with all the players, and they can compete with the players, and they can generate revenue themselves. And with the time going, we are also releasing a series of different UGC editors for our players, that are creators. They can train their own AI. They can customize their own territories, their own buildings, their own maps. Our the whole world inside Elysium, besides from the central city, will be created, owned, and monetized by all the players. So they can host like any kind of gameplays. They can host any kind of experience based on their own NPCs, their own meta beings, and trained by themselves. So this is like kind of our unique technology, because if you guys ever saw the movie Free Guy last year, that the concept or the future that the movie Free Guy introduced is actually what we have been working on for the past 4 years. we have a very mature infrastructure to bring consciousness or bring like decision making power to the virtual beings that they can interact with all the players. And so yeah, I think that's the unique part that we want to build these the Delysium, this MMO open world experience much more sustainable and innovative, because like for traditional like MMO experience, including like World of Warcraft, everyone is dreaming about like whether it's a dynamic or it's a real like it's a more vivid or real world that I can live into. But all the NPCs inside those MMO gameplay, they are manuscripted. They are still like produced by traditional workflow. But using our AI, using our unique technology, we can provide users the most immersive metaverse so far, and maybe in the future that they can live another life inside this virtual world. So yeah, I think that's our progress, and we are also very welcoming like all the players who are interested in testing the game or contributing to our be one of the contributors, join our community and join our pre-alpha test program.
Yeah, and what it looks like to me, and some of the nostalgia, I guess, from my childhood, the futuristic game that gives me the most nostalgia, at least, is Mass Effect. I loved the game
Yep.
Mass Effect, and whenever I watch the gameplay and watch what you guys are building, it reminds me of like a faster paced, more modernized cyberpunk Mass Effect. And so it's battle royale, correct?
Yeah, like the first PvP tournament season will be based on battle royale. That's built by us, but it's like we never say like the second season or the third season will still be battle royale. It may be hosted on top of like some users or some creators generated gameplay. If the gameplay, if the experience is attractive enough, then we will host our official PvP season on top of that gameplay rather than our own PvP like battle royale. So
Okay.
eventually, I think it's also one of the core spirit of Web3 that the ownership should be, like the workflow or the production theory should change. That we are actually, giving more control or the more ownership to our contributors, players, that they are like we're providing tools for them. We're providing the infrastructure, the world itself, and the tools for them, and they are the owner. They are creating the content. They are creating the experience inside these, the whole game. So yeah, I think that's also one of the very similar point between Delysium and Shrapnel that we all mentioned about it.
Yeah, that was
And I'm
what I was
really
about to
happy.
say too. I love that approach. You guys are putting it in the community's hands, the moddable maps, basically governance in Delysium in terms of what the trend, what the game mode is, what that season has in store. It's power to the players, and that's exactly what this whole industry can provide. So I'm curious as well, just for both of your perspectives, what whenever you look ahead, uh, when are, and this is always obviously no dates promised, what are the expected release dates potentially for the game so people can have that development timeline? Because people sometimes overshadow the fact that Call of Duties take 2 years at least to make because they switch studios every year. So even though Call of Duty does pump out a game every single year, it's a new studio every single year. So it's really an 18-month, 20, 24-month timeline. So when would you guys say safely that the game should be playable, maybe alpha testable? Obviously, Delysium's around the corner, but with Shrapnel, what is the timeline on that?
Yeah, Call of Duty is actually a 4-year timeline. There's 4
There it is.
studios that make it. Yep. Um, and that's with a sequelitis title, right? Which over
And
they know what
hundreds
they're.
and hundreds and hundreds of devs.
Yep. Yes, and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have many good friends, and we have people here who worked on Call of Duty, were leadership roles in Call of Duty, so super familiar with that production process.
Makes sense.
So I can't talk about exact dates,
Of
certainly.
course.
I
Never
can
would
talk
ask.
about like what to anticipate, kind of roadmap wise, which is a notion of creator tools, probably earlier than people would expect. To a certain degree, I don't want to say we're leading with creator tools, but we're looking to ensure creator tools are in people's hands, in the blast zone of the actual playable. And we're not going to be super precious with the playable either, kind of in the same way as of Delysium and like pulling people in to experience it and get feedback early. Like that'll be hitting probably sooner than people expect as well. And that's everything. We're going with our style is kind of 70-30, so it's 70% recognizable, 30% future tech. We take play our game takes place in 2046. We believe in that kind of like blonde comp aesthetic effectively. It also gives you like more weight, more realistic ballistics. We're not going to have like hit scan everything. There's going to be actual models against it. So that's the sort of thing you need to get feedback from players on, because there's a fine line between realistic and annoying, and it needs to actually play well and be fun. And you're still have this human computer interface that you're on your controller or your mouse and keyboard. Like you have to respect and recognize that, and it requires a lot of iteration and feedback. So we'll be pulling people in at that level very early, and then you'll see not just creator tools, but an initial set of those kind of like put your brand on the Shrapnel universe. But very quickly, the ability to mint and then trade those items that you're putting your brand on as well, and start to participate that way. So you'll have the like, I just want to shoot stuff and I want to be rewarded for that and give feedback, or I want to make stuff and I want to start to get involved there. We want to make sure that those are all being brought up at the same time, so that people can, again, it's kind of like our mantra, just get in touch with the system and participate in the way that you want and that makes sense for you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's like, I'm a shooter fan. So like all my life, I grew up on these, shooting games, Call of Duty, Gears of War, the Mass Effects, for example. So that just makes so much sense to me too. For anyone who does have that other niche, whether they want to build maps, unrolling that full package for the full community to be able to get involved with is amazing. And then Delysium, as far as the timelines there, when can players expect to potentially be able to hop in when it's not an alpha test, for example? So that way people can see your development timeline as well. And then what does the roadmap look like going ahead for you guys?
This July. So our original roadmap was this July that we're opening a public alpha test. So like public alpha season. Right now it's invitation only, but in this July it will be a public. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
yeah, I think for us, like Don also mentioned about like what's like how much or how much time and how much money like traditional AAA cost. We are also very familiar with that. But one thing that we try to achieve and we try to break the ground in Delysium is we're actually like shortening our iteration to like 2 weeks a version. That we are releasing a version that can deliver to the players 2 weeks and iteration. That was really fast. And based on this iteration and based on this methodology, that we can that we can fit into this model rather than traditional AAA like for a simple iteration. They may need like 2 months or 6 months. That's too long for players to wait for their contribution. So I think a faster iteration can give players more sense of ownership that they are actually contributing to the content. Either it's small or like like a big feature. They are showing their ownership, and it needs some adjustment of the workflow and methodology, but it's kind of a way that we are using we're like Tesla, that we are iterating cars like much faster than traditional manufacturer, that we are iterating AAA like much faster than traditional like production team. So I think that's the place as a point that we think we try to break the ground, and we want to break the model from that. And I think from here in the future, we can definitely bring more to the players, including the UGC, including the AI editors, including the whole metaverse. But the one thing that we have to confront, that is to build a complete AAA experience, it still need like 4 years or 3 years or 4 years. It still need a massive amount of depths and amount of cost, but it's a way of like prioritizing different tasks, and and like strengthening the player's ownership in certain stage. One project, but like one project I always refer to a lot, and which has some 50-50 50-50 views on that, was Star Citizen. And they're also a very, very huge project, and they're also implementing such methodology that they are building the game like small step by small step, and like after 10 years. So I think that's another way for a new studio or for a startup to compete with all these traditional giants, because like traditional giant, they got IP, they got devs, they got teams, they got money, they got distribution channels, they got players. So it's very hard for a new startup to compete with them. But I think Web3 gives all the startups, or like all the producers, or the game, or the developers who wanted to build a real fun game, or a real innovative gameplay, an opportunity to compete with them, rather than just simply controlled by all those traditional giants, that they're not treating game simply as game, they're treating game as a product, as a product selling to their consumers. So I think it's also a huge opportunity. So we have to embrace it, and we have to help the industry to become more sustainable, and to bring more opportunity to those producers, to those developers who has dreams of building fun gameplay, or innovative gameplay.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, last year alone, there was 50, and this is just Activision here, but the entire industry brought in $52 billion in revenue, basically all on microtransactions. So when you're taking a look at that, when the players own 0% of it, it can
Yes.
not, that's just the entire problem with it.
Just
And
a
especially
one-way
as a
funnel.
it is. It's a one-way funnel. You're lighting your cash on fire basically when you're buying these Fortnite skins, etc. And as someone who has spent money in games and bought map packs, DLCs over the time, I completely see that, and I'm so honored to have had you guys on the show today, and sharing your thoughts on not just your projects but the industry. And I can see there's so much similarities here in the mindset and the way that you guys are going about building your projects, which makes me super, super excited. Don, Yuheng, go ahead and just tell people where they can follow Shrapnel and Delysium, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, I mean, the best place to find us is on Twitter at Play Shrapnel. You can also, our website is at shrapnel.com. Both of them, you can link to our Discord. We have a very lively community, very positive, awesome community. So if you're want to get involved, want to participate, and our devs are in there. We're very active in there as well. So feel free to come join, ask some questions, chat it up. And then of course, operators, the whitelist release is at 1 p.m. today, I think, but the public launch on OpenSea will be June 9th. And then we'll have one every week, a new release for each character every week for the 5 weeks after.
Awesome. All right. That is awesome to hear. And then Yuheng, go ahead and tell us where we can find Delysium, and then we'll close it out.
Yes, the best entry is also on Twitter, the Delysium, the handle, and we also welcome everyone to join our Discord. We have as I mentioned a lot of times, that we focus on building the community around gamers. So there are like lots of hardcore gamers inside our community, and it's a very positive and very friendly community to talk about, and to dream about, or to talk about like what's the future of gameplay, and what kind of gameplay that they liked inside Elysium. And we will follow their advice, and we will our professional team will design, and will tell them like what's the most reasonable and the doable plan. And yeah, so we are also like as I mentioned, we're also launching our pre-alpha test, and for this stage we welcome like all the players to joining our Discord and apply for an invitation to the pre-alpha test. and we are also launching our NFTs in the next step, and also we have a very interesting, one of the most special ways to release our white paper, and it will be released within 2 weeks. And yeah, I wish that everyone that is seeing this video can keep an eye on our Twitter, and it will be the most special way to release a white paper that you have ever seen. And
Love
it's
it.
confidential now, but I kept that as a secret. Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, all right, guys. Thank y'all so much for joining me once again. Guys, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and if you are bullish on the future of NFT gaming, Shrapnel, Delysium, and of course, in the game here right on Crypto Banter. Subscribe to the channel for more daily shows, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of In the Game. As always, play well, my friends.